There's three major issues, as I see it, with IoT at the moment: privacy, security, and interoperability. On the interoperability side, this is a really big problem that at the moment, at this very early fledgling stage of IoT, a lot of results and a lot of the ways in which consumers are choosing products depends a lot on the products provided by big companies. And generally, those products only work within a particular ecosystem. So Amazon likes to connect with Amazon products, or companies that support the Amazon Echo, for example. Likewise, Google has its products that it connects to, Apple the same. So we're in a situation at the moment where you can go to a shop and you can decide to, say, buy a smart light bulb to connect to your IoT device, but is that smart light bulb going to be an Amazon light bulb or a Google light bulb? And until interoperability issues are addressed, it makes it very difficult for consumers to make that choice and the confidence that when they buy, say, a smart light bulb, it'll just work with whatever you have at your home. So the W3C, or the World Wide Web Consortium, it's an international body designed to create web standards. So all the code that happens behind a web page is based on standards developed by the W3C. The particular work that I do is part of the Web Accessibility Initiative, which looks specifically at disability-related issues. And my involvement in that is part of the Research Questions Task Force. And basically what we do is we look at what's just over the horizon in terms of technology and what are its implications likely to be for people with disabilities. So this includes things like driverless cars, virtual reality, augmented reality, and Internet of Things. And one of the biggest things we're looking at the moment is in relation to what's called the Web of Things. And this again comes back to issues of interoperability. And we're looking at a lot of user cases as to how people with disabilities are engaging with IoT at different levels. And certainly from a standards perspective, there's big concerns over a range of issues such as privacy, security, interoperability. A big part of what we're looking at in terms of standards and cooperation amongst different organisations and companies is to try to find ways that we can ensure that not only is IoT an effective thing for people with disabilities as it is, but to make sure that issues such as security and privacy are addressed so that people with disabilities can use these things in confidence without concern of things like hacking without personal data being used inappropriately or without permission. At the moment, in terms of engaging with IoT, there are three major ways you can do it. You can do it through the use of a panel on a device like a smart fridge with a touch panel. You can do it through a smartphone, or you can do it with a digital assistant. In terms of the smart panel, there are some issues with it, and this harks back mostly to assistive technology. Assistive technology is software, generally software, used to support people with disability in how they interact with a particular device. So for example, on a smartphone, a lot of modern smartphones today, be it iOS devices or Android, will come with a program called a screen reader. And a screen reader is how a blind person will use that device. So when you turn on the screen reader, you move your finger around the screen, and as you do that, it will read things out to you. And this is very effective, and with gestures, you can navigate around your device, you can read things out, you can have a lot of practice. And most modern devices today are full of assistive technology features across a range of disabilities. However, when it comes to those three IoT interface solutions, it can be tricky because not all of them support great assistive technology. To look at the smart fridge example first with the touchscreen, it's unlikely that that interface will have assistive technology in it because it's probably a proprietary interface, which means a lot of disability groups won't be able to interact with that device. The smartphone is a great option because the smartphone will have the assistive technologies in it that people need, and that will then in turn help them get access to apps and other mechanisms to access IoT. When it comes to digital assistants, this becomes more of a companion device. So it doesn't meet the needs of all disability groups, but in addition to a smartphone, it can provide that extra functionality, like a blind person being able to speak to it, or a person in a wheelchair being able to engage with it instead of having to physically reach things on objects. Ultimately, though, assistive technology is what allows people with disability to access devices, and if assistive technology isn't a part of the solution, then again it makes it more difficult for people with disabilities to use. There are some issues for people with disabilities when it comes to IoT more specifically, And I think one of those really critical ones is that the way in which interface works is still very early days. So we talked about the fact that there are some great benefits for people with disability in terms of being able to engage with products by using voice. It's amazing for myself as a legally blind person that I can just shout out in my room commands and they just happen thanks to my digital assistant. But there are issues in terms of whether that speech is recognised, and even when that speech is recognised, as it is most of the time, the device doesn't always know what to do with it, and there's always that risk that the wrong commands will be interpreted incorrectly, that I'll struggle to get certain things done because it might have worked fine yesterday but not today. And also, we need to make sure that these devices work across different disabilities. For example, if an IoT device was put at a counter to be like a receptionist in an organisation and people could interact with that, that would be fine for someone who's vision impaired who could walk up and talk to that device, but that wouldn't be fine for someone who's hearing impaired. So you'd need to have a display or something along those lines to make sure that the person who's hearing impaired can interact with that as well. So going forward, I think for people with disabilities, it's important that as this very fledgling industry starts to grow, we can certainly see that there are great benefits. And really, IoT as it stands has only been with us for a few years in the consumer space. We do need to make sure that people with disabilities can effectively get access to these benefits regardless of what their disability is.